You're listening to the Courting Happiness podcast. This is a place where self-care becomes part of your day. A space where you learn evidence-based strategy to help your life, share it with those you love, and cultivate well-being at work. I'm your host, Dr. Kortni Alston. I'm a former news director, television reporter turned happiness scholar, TEDx speaker, and transformational trainer. I also understand hardships. While working my dream job in television, I lived a nightmare of suddenly becoming a young widow after 86 days of marriage. I became committed to learning more about resilience, healing, and happiness. This is how I discovered my area of research, which is positive psychology. Now I'm living my calling of training individuals and organizations on happiness, and my new chapter begins with being happily engaged. The Courting and Courting Happiness is about a true courtship. I like to say commitment with happiness. The K in courting stands for the vulnerability of sharing my story, inspirational interviews with phenomenal people, the infusion of positive psychology, and so much more. You'll learn how to commit to your well-being one episode at a time. I hope you subscribe and share. So, are you ready? Let's get started. Welcome to episode 21. Our topic today is going to be all about savoring the moment. But before we get started, I wanted to spend some time to thank you so much for listening. Your support means the world to me. And we are so excited here within the Courting Happiness podcast because we're growing. We're growing. Our listeners are growing all over the world, and we are so grateful and appreciative. We now have listeners in Australia, New Zealand, India, and Portugal, and we continue to grow in the United States. I'm happy to say that we now see listeners all across the country in California, Wisconsin, Virginia, and New York. I'm so excited that so many of you are joining us, and so happy that you are spending time watching and really listening to the Courting Happiness podcast. We truly appreciate you. Plus, we also have some more happy news to share. FeedSpot has given this podcast an incredible honor. So incredible. The Courting Happiness podcast was listed, are you ready for this? As one of the top 80 workplace podcasts to follow in 2021. I feel like I should have like a machine that goes, yay! Woohoo! Right? I am so super excited. Thanks so much, FeedSpot. We truly appreciate your support in including this podcast on your list. We are again grateful and just so honored. So, wow, talk about some truly happy news. So let's talk about savoring the moment. So my fiance, Ken, and I served on a panel together in Clubhouse about a couple of weeks ago. Now, for any new listeners, check out episode 5, where you have an opportunity to meet Ken. So Ken was on the podcast to share how positive psychology has inspired our relationship. So again, a couple of weeks ago, during Valentine's Day, we served on a panel in Clubhouse, which I am really loving Clubhouse, by the way. So for any of those listeners that are in Clubhouse, feel free to follow me in Clubhouse. I would love to be able to connect with you also in Clubhouse as well. So this discussion, I don't know, should I call it a panel in Clubhouse? Well, it was kind of a panel. It was a discussion with other couples and that are in broadcasting and singles, sharing their experiences in terms of finding love in journalism. So it was journalists. It was really focused on journalists finding love. So Ken is a former TV reporter, for those who may not know, here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I am a former television reporter and news director. And I've worked in various markets all across the country, from Houston, Texas, started off in Midland, Philadelphia, Youngstown, Ohio, just to name a few. So during the panel, we shared three ways to find love and build a relationship. I mentioned savoring. I discuss the importance of savoring the moment. See, in positive psychology, savoring is all about appreciating and enhancing positive experiences. Now, this gives us an opportunity to slow down and to really appreciate what's in front of us or those experiences that we're having. Happiness researcher Bridget Greenville Cleve, who I've mentioned many times on various podcast episodes. She is the author of a book called A Practical Guide, Positive Psychology. I love the book. It's never too far away from me. And she has a full chapter talking about the value of savoring. Now, I'm going to quote her in terms of this. So, this is a quote from Greenville Cleve, and she says, quote, "By savoring, you slow down and consciously pay attention to all your senses: touch, taste, sight, sound, and smell. You stretch out the experience and concentrate on noticing what it is that you really enjoy, whether it's sipping a glass of chilled champagne, looking forward to collecting your child from nursery, or recollecting the time you scored a hat trick for the office football team." So I love those examples that she shared. This approach really allows us to truly appreciate and learn to appreciate what's good in life, right? We can really see so much value in what Greenville Cleve shares in her quote and how she ends it talking about kind of recollecting the time you scored, right? In a hat trick for your office football team, end quote. And it really speaks to the importance of savoring the moment, savoring those experiences. This approach, again, allows us to appreciate and learn to appreciate what is good in our life. So, in my relationship, at one point, Ken and I were long distance. We were about 295 miles away from each other. Actually, it's 295.5 miles away from each other, door to door. You could tell I was counting, right? I was living in Macon, Georgia, working for a university there. He was here in Charlotte, doing the work, as a reporter at the television station. And we would see each other on the weekends. So during the weekends, those were our times together. So Friday were travel days for either of us, meaning if it was Ken's, I guess time to come see me, in Macon, or my time to travel to Charlotte from Macon. So sometimes we would kind of trade off on certain weekends, and there were many times that Ken would travel quite a bit from Charlotte to Macon. So by the time Ken finished with his live appearance on the news, which in the industry we call them a live shot. So after he would finish his live shot, by the time he would hit the road, he would arrive at my home in Macon after midnight, excuse me. So after midnight. So which is really Saturday already, right? And in many cases, the same for me. As a college professor, my days would end a little sooner than his, but I would arrive much later that evening, probably around after 5 hours on the road, if we didn't have traffic. And, I would leave immediately after my classes ended in office hours. And so, well, when you kind of think about that and you do the math, we really truly had a day and a half together. Just a day and a half a week we would spend with each other. Um for maybe a couple of years, maybe a year or two into our relationship. Maybe a year and a half or two, close to 2 years into our relationship, excuse me. And so I will tell you this, just a day and a half that we would have, we would savor every second. Honestly, it felt like the time was much longer because we simply didn't say, geez, whew, we just have a day and a half together. We would say, wow, we have a day and a half together. This is great. We were so grateful. I mean, I was grateful that Ken, always arrived safe. But once he arrived, it felt like a holiday. It was time for celebration. And we would honor that time by cherishing the time we had together. Now, Greenville Cleve recommends an activity she calls Ways to Savor. Her exercise focuses on, like, what are synonyms for the word savor? So, when you think of savor, what are the synonyms that you can come up with? I want you to think about that for a moment. So, when you hear the word savor, what other word do you hear? What does it mean to you? What's a synonym for savor? Now, this is what she lists. She lists, you might have come up with relishing. Earlier, I just came up with cherishing. Remember, I said we cherished the time we spent together. Another word she mentioned, another synonym was treasuring. So relishing, cherishing, treasuring, reveling, basking, and she ends it with marveling. Then she says, spend 5 minutes thinking about those synonyms and what they look like. Begin to visualize and think about what it means to you when you're basking in something. What do you do when you treasure? What do you do? What do you do when you're cherishing? And what do you revel in? Now, turn and think and be in the present. So, as you continue to kind of think through this, think about this by listening again to this podcast, all right? So, right now, think about your current experience. Is there something that is happening that you savor? Is it something that happened today? Something that just happened? Hey, maybe it's this podcast that you savor, right? So, the first part of the exercise, you find so many different ways to develop, right, what savoring is and what it means. And when you begin to start to look at it in terms of asking yourself those questions, what do you treasure? What do you cherish? What do you revel in? Right? Then you begin to look at your day and the positive things that happen day to day and those day to day experiences that you have. So Greenville Cleve shares there's 5 steps. She says how to savor in 5 steps. So let's go over them. The first one is slow down. Right? Number 1, slow down. It's really something that's really important, right? Because it allows us to really be present. Slow down. Number 2 is pay attention to what you're doing. That really allows us to really focus and be in the moment and be mindful. Pay attention to what you're doing. Number 3, use all your senses. So remember that quote that she shared? Well, I shared. That was her quote in terms of sharing, the dynamics of savoring. So when she mentioned the senses, remember those senses? Touch, taste, sight, sound, and smell. So she said, use all your senses. When I see or really think of, and because I'm a highly visual person, when I think of number 3, use all your senses, one of my favorite moments that I savor every day is my morning cup of coffee. I love the smell of coffee. Just love the smell. It every time I think of the smell of coffee, it reminds me of my day starting. the taste. I love the taste of it. I love, I love my favorite coffee, is caramel macchiato, skinny caramel macchiato. Is my, order, very regularly at Starbucks. I love tasting, the milk and the caramel, and, um, I love really enjoying that beverage. So the smell of it, the taste, and if I pick up that favorite cup of coffee of mine at Starbucks, I love the interaction with the barista. Or if I make the coffee at home, right? I love hearing the coffee maker. Plus, it's telling me that coffee's coming. So I love that. I love the sound. The sound. Another element of our senses, right? And there's nothing like a cup of coffee that has a beautiful design. So when a barista pours a cup of coffee and creates that latte art, right? When they're pouring the steamed milk into the coffee cup, creating a pattern on the surface of the coffee. I mean, that is beautiful. That is just, to me, just a work of art. It gives me an opportunity to look at my cup of coffee and appreciate it. Notice I am savoring the moment with a cup of coffee. A cup of coffee. So use all your senses. All right, I love that. Number 4, she shares, stretch out the experiences. Stretch them out. As I shared earlier, Ken and I had a day and a half together, just a day and a half, right? Just a day and a half, but no, just a day and a half. Yay, yay, day and a half. And we stretched it out. So think about stretching out those experiences and reflect on your enjoyment. That's the last one. Number 5, reflect on your enjoyment. Number 1, let's go back to them. Number 1, slow down. Number 2, pay attention to what you're doing. Number 3, use all your senses. Number 4, stretch out the experiences. And number 5, reflect on your enjoyment. So that day and a half that Ken and I would spend together, as I mentioned, let me tell you how we stretched out those experiences. We had so many adventures, so many adventures. If it wasn't seeing friends, it was meeting new friends, meeting his friends, Ken meeting my friends, meeting my family. But also there were the adventures of horse-drawn carriage rides in a day and a half. Also, a beautiful scavenger hunt that Ken um, planned. He he actually uh, connected with people in his community and had me go out on the scavenger hunt where he left all of these surprises for me, all these gifts and love notes all over town. And I had an opportunity of getting these beautiful love notes, piling up on these amazing gifts that I cherish to this day. But then meeting the people in the community and, having a chance to connect with them, even though at the time I wasn't a resident yet. So it was a wonderful way for him to open his world to me. Because when you're long distance and you're talking on the phone and, you're going through your day and you're running errands and you're like, "Oh, where are you right now?" "Oh, I'm at the cleaners." "Oh, where are you right now?" I'm at the store." So, when I was on the other end of that, I would always, "Oh, okay, he's at the cleaners. Oh, he's at the store." And I would kind of visualize what that looks like because as you guys know, I'm a visual person, right? But what I love so much about the scavenger hunt, that adventure, is that it allowed me to have a window into his world. And I loved being able to meet with people. And it was great for them to be able to share with me how of an amazing person he is, but then also how it was great to see us together, So it was wonderful to see people in the community continually to embrace us, embracing him individually and then embracing us as a couple. But notice, even as I'm sitting here sharing that experience with you, I'm savoring it. It happened a couple of years ago, but it feels like it happened just yesterday because I can sit here and I can visualize and I can reflect and I can truly savor. So I look back on our time in terms of, living when we live long distance. I look back on it fondly. It's funny because we live together now and we often talk about that time. We treasured every single moment. We savored it. And I will admit, I love that he savors it too. I highly recommend sharing those moments that you savor with the ones you love. All right, well, let's continue this conversation online. Our time has ended today, but I'm hoping we can continue this online. Join us on Instagram at Courting Happiness. Don't forget, it's courting with a K. Also, you can join our private Facebook community. That's our Courting Happiness podcast community. That is Courting Happiness podcast community on Facebook. Our private Facebook community is a safe haven to share, meet more people looking to build positive relationships, focus on well-being, and create a happier life. So are you ready to spread happiness? I hope you subscribe and share this podcast with your family, friends, coworkers, and all the important people in your world. We release a new episode every Thursday. Congratulations on your continued commitment to your courting happiness journey. Thank you so much for listening. We want you to be well, be happier, and be kinder to yourself. We can't wait to see you next week.